This mountain is the Ddiallt, 6 miles southwest of Bala Lake, and it's here that the River Dee, the Creek of Chester as some call it, starts off as an oozing spring.
At the highest point, this river is still known in Welsh as the Dyfrdwy.
This water flows through the main towns of Bala, Llangollen and Chester, where nearly 500,000 people rely on it for recreation, agriculture and industry. But for me, it tumbles through some of the most dramatic scenery to be found anywhere.
These mountains have yielded rich pickings, like gold, so it's no wonder that the territory has attracted uninvited guests.
The first cohort of the Nervi, a Roman cavalry regiment, muscled their way in here in 78 AD. They subdued the locals and built themselves a garrison fort, Caer Gai. There's more of the Roman fort here than meets the eye initially. That's where the rest of it is. Now this is the farmhouse, but the stones used to be part of the fort. It's a shame we can't see the fort as it was, but then the idea of preserving an ancient site is a modern concept.
Mind you, we're lucky to see the farmhouse at all, because it was nearly burnt out during the Civil War. And down by the riverside, I've heard there's a rare bird nesting around here, the BSA bantam. This is the home of a farmer turned landscape gardener turned sculptor, Elia Rowlands. He's resolving some inner conflict.
That's the original me there, and there's a new me trying to fight myself out of the old me. I suppose, you know, being brought up in a rural community, you're expected to live your life in a certain kind of way, but you don't really want to do that. So maybe that's where the frustration comes in.
You come from this area, you were born here. Was it 5 generations you've lived here? Is that the old self you're talking about?
I suppose it is, because I always felt that other people were expecting me to carry on this family Welsh thing all the time.
What, as a farmer or as a shepherd or?
As a farmer, really, and do certain things which are expected of you. And there's a tension, you're trying to fight yourself out of that feeling all the time.
He's made this chainsaw by Chainsaw, and this is one of his models. And these are Elia's version of garden gnomes.
This was a project I did for night school in Bala. Some kind of beggar clothes I used to go out on a Saturday night from the 60s.
It must have been a hell of a do.
When a neighbour of mine saw this, she had difficulty sleeping during the night.
And him too.
She started off as a tree in a garden I did in Bryn, South Marchog. But the garden had to be extended, so I had to cut her off and bring her home. Then I thought, since she was in the trailer, I'd take her around Bala for a ride. But she ended up here eventually. She does move around though.
I wonder if she's been seen in Llanuwchllyn, best known for it being the home of the founders of the Urdd, the Welsh youth movement. Here's a statue of O.M. Edwards and his son, Sir Ivan ap Owen Edwards, who got the whole thing going. They stand right by Lake Bala, where I've parked my dragon boat. I hope it looks tough enough to frighten off Teggy, the mythical monster who's supposed to lurk in these waters.
This is the largest natural lake in Wales, and it's 150 feet deep. right at the bottom lurks a unique Iron Age fish, the guinead. You won't find it anywhere else in the world, except in my jar.
Well, today, that is. Another fish fancier was Lord George Lyttelton, who had this to say in 1756 about the townsfolk.
What Balor's most famous for is the beauty of its women, and indeed I saw there some of the prettiest girls I ever beheld. Even so, I preferred the flavour of the guinead to the lips of the fair maids of Balor.
He must have had strange taste in women. At the northern end of the lake, the Dee flows out as an already mature river. I'm rowing towards Llandrillo to see an artist friend. He's been doing this place up for years. It's an elegant Georgian structure that was once a shooting lodge. Peter Kindred was a set designer and first came to North Wales to work on a TV drama.
In the painting, you've got a beautiful farmhouse and barn. Is it a real or imagined place?
It is a real place, or it was a real place, which sadly enough they pulled down behind us here, which sat on the River Dee, which I think is an absolute dreadful shame. And the other, the mountainous scene, is a photograph that I took of the Berwyn Mountains, looking down to the village. So I've amalgamated the two to create a sort of fairly dramatic effect. What I wanted to do was try and get a great shaft of light, you know, where you get those amazing sort of dark grey skies. And then you get an enormous great shaft of yellow light just for a second or two, lighting something. I think actually the landscape without any light on it is quite dull. I mean, it desperately needs some strong light or some very dramatic light to actually give the landscape some shape and some interest. When I've got it painted to a certain level of development, I always put a frame around it, and then I can see where it needs building. It helps me balance the whole painting.
Peter has a wide range of styles, but they're all based on his main interests, some of which are inspired by his gourmet tastes. But it's his rural scenes I enjoy most.
It's a classic Welsh landscape. It's very, very close because it's got undulations going from left to right, and it's got undulations going from the foreground to the middle distance to the background. And he's handled it absolutely brilliantly. The way he's done it is he's used very vibrant colours, and this great wedge, this triangle of lemon yellow, allied to the white of the sheep, brings the foreground right up in front of you. It goes back where it sweeps down into this valley, this cwm here, that's exaggerated by this blue, the Silurian blue, that takes the back mountain away from you. And he's used the first principle of landscape painting. He's put a bit of the colour of the ground in the sky. It's almost like a bedspread or a kind of eider down. It just smacks of enjoyment.
Together with his wife Bridget, Peter's provided hospitality to lots of people since he worked on Fawlty Towers, the famous situation comedy.
Peter, this beautiful house isn't only a home, is it?
No, it's a hotel. We bought it as a very old country house about 18 years ago and changed it. I loved the area. I thought, what a marvellous place to come and paint. We thought we'd buy an old house and do a bit of bed and breakfast. We gradually got carried away with becoming hoteliers. I paint, I run art classes, and we now use the home as part of being able to run courses from it.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Tempted though I was by his bangers and mash, I had to get on.
This is a plain little 17th century chapel, and from the outside it looks unremarkable. But there's a few pearls inside this architectural oyster.
Prog is a 17th century chapel built by the Salisbury family. They were great landowners in the area.
This is a magnificent carved and coloured roof. It's supported on 5 trusses with flowing floral designs, and 2 of them hold up these charming cut-out angels.
The decoration in here reminds me of the peasant folk art of Eastern Europe, but it's actually the product of British high church experiments of the mid-1600s.
I love this candelabrum. What is so distinctive about it are the 2 tiers of radial arms for the candle holders. I'd like to light it, but I'd probably burn the whole place down if I did.
I'm paddling around the Great Bridge at Corwen. This is Owen Glyndŵr country, the last real Prince of Wales, a 15th century hero whose charisma still excites us today. You'd think we might have a fitting tribute to him, and there is something in Corwen town.
Right subject, right place, right time. What a shame. This sculpture takes no notice whatsoever of the human body. The proportion is dire.
Someone of his stature should really have had our best efforts. This sells him short. Nice old bridge at Carrog. Further down the Dee, it's a bit more complicated. At Berwyn, you've got a choice. A road bridge, a canal bridge, a river bridge, a footbridge, or a railway bridge. They're all ways of getting across the gorge to meet the Llangollen Steam Railway.
I could take this train, but I got another way of getting about.
I'm sort of beached at Llangollen, where the bridge just happens to be one of the 7 wonders of Wales.
Pistel Rhaeadr and Wrexham steeple, Snowdon's mountain without its people. Over to New Trees, St Winifred's well, Llangollen Bridge and Gresford bells. If there was an 8th wonder, that would be it.
Or it would be if it had the number of salmon that used to leap over these rocks. Here are some of the local lads with a typical catch from the 1930s.
There's a lot of wildlife associated with the river, but it's not all in there.
The man who runs this amazing and, for me, exciting shop was born in Jamaica, but came to live in Llangollen as a child. Doug Coates has always been fascinated by fur and feathers, and he's clever enough to make his living from his interest.
What are you doing, Doug?
What we're doing, Dave, is drying the skin onto the mannequin. The squirrel's been modelled up, the skin's been washed and tanned, And now we're just modelling, finishing
When
them
you
off.
say mannequin, what does that? What is a mannequin?
Well, a mannequin, here we have one running up a tree. If you can imagine that.
So that's a
Inside
mannequin
it.
for a squirrel, is it?
That's it.
Okay.
What we do, the idea is to put back what we take out. We make a model of the actual carcass.
So you're modelling as opposed to stuffing it, sort of
That's
thing.
right.
It's more of a sculptural thing.
It is.
The eyes look so real. Those can't be real eyes, surely.
No, the eyes are glass. Let's have a look here. Here we have some eyes.
It's extraordinary.
Once it's all sort of combed and brushed into position, that's when it's left to dry, and then it's worked onto its rock after, or an artificial branch, wherever it goes on.
Doug will only work on animals which have died naturally or accidentally.
Here we have a road casualty pheasant, which was brought in for mounting. We've got a pair of king parrots here, very pretty birds. They came in from a wildlife park. What else? Oh, this is unusual. A red badger. That came from the Badger Society in Denby. It's quite unusual.
Here's the work of a real master.
This composition, I think, takes taxidermy to another level. I think it's no accident that it's almost oriental in its feel, but I think what you've done to perfection is indicated the level of the river.
It's an illusion, isn't it? It was a trial and error job that really worked. The reeds have been emptied and they're pumped full of foam to keep them nice and rigid and also to hold the two little sedge warblers that are hanging on there.
And what are the fish? What make of those?
Perch. This one came from the River Dee. He was found run over a couple of miles down the road towards the Sunt River. In this country we've got 2 million birds and animals get run over a week.
A week?
A week. For instance, 50,000 badgers get run over annually. If I could set up and sell badgers as fast as they come in here, I could make a living out of just mounting badgers.
That'd be a roaring trade then. The longest aqueduct in Britain is at Pontcysyllta. Thomas Telford built it in 1805, 126 feet above the river. And in the distance is the main rail line over a viaduct, which was built 43 years later. Bangor-on-Dee is often in danger of flooding, but in the Dark Ages it was threatened by invading Northumbrian tribes too. This was an important monastic site, but the constant raids forced the community to escape to the far west. I love its tranquility now. I could make myself at home here.
Erdig is a house with a social face. It holds a wealth of human experience behind that impressive facade.
This was the seat of the York family, who made their money from local coalfields and extensive property interests. Philip York I started a family tradition of commissioning unusual portraits in the 1790s.
Originally, this was the kitchen of the house. Nowadays, it's a portrait gallery. But it's very special because these are the actual people who laboured here. And that's very rare indeed. Thomas Rogers, carpenter. Another chip from nature's block is added to the parent stock. Apprentice first and to a wheelwright, his hero might have been a keelwright. But soon he did outstrip his trade, and next our carpenter is made. William Williams, the blacksmith. This child of fire, Vulcanian imp, his old sire knew him by his limp. But these were not his brighter tools. He flourished in the boxing schools.
The border between England and Wales runs down the centre of the river at Holt. And there's the borderline, right at Chester.
The first recorded drowning in the Dee was of a Roman officer who fell from a fishing boat, which was a bit of a shame, really, because he was up for a promotion.
Poor Caius, but at least he didn't get eaten by lions.
Diva is the Roman fortress built almost 2,000 years ago, which now lies buried beneath the hustle and bustle of modern-day Chester.
It's a well-heeled city with some outstanding town architecture and loudmouths.
Unloyal city of Chester!
There was a time when being here and being Welsh meant that you were in the greatest danger.
Croeso i'r hein Caer, and don't forget to be out of the city before sunset!
Look at this. Lots of people are enjoying the riverbank. What a natural facility on your doorstep. And what a shame that so many of our river-based towns seem blind to the obvious pleasures that rivers can bring.
Here's somebody who might agree with me. Local artist Lucy Jones showed me around the city, and in particular the medieval shopping rows, before taking me off to see the Flintshire Bridge near the estuary. It occupies an industrial area near Connors Quay. Lucy has made an installation piece of it, based on her recent photographic investigation.
Those pylons are a bit of a nuisance, aren't they? Because it's very linear. It's to do with
It's a shame you can't see the bridge on its own, but at the same time it just reflects the environment it's in. I think it's really elegant, yeah. I think it's a beautiful bridge, especially for a really industrial area.
It's so strong, and yet up close, it's so exciting. It's amazing with all the strings almost.
It was fantastic as we just came across it before, whereas as you're coming up to it, it looks just like a harp, some sort of musical
Like a
instrument.
harp?
Yeah.
It is very like a harp.
Because it's got curved lines and then all the straight lines cutting.
The most amazing perspectives happening. It's almost like you don't know where you are because the perspectives are all going in the different directions.
Yeah, and as you go over it in a car or whatever, you get all these sort of like lights flashing. I chose the colours of the spectrum, and each box goes through the colours of the spectrum, so that to encourage the viewer to walk across or follow the images with their eyes in a certain order. Because they only light up when you tread on them, they don't actually exist without the viewer.
These panels almost are a bridge in themselves, aren't they?
Yeah. It's taking it a little bit step further. I thought, how can I make the viewer participate more and interact more with the artwork? Well, what do you do with the bridge? You walk over it. So it seemed the obvious solution. Rainbow bridge. The rainbow, everybody knows the colours of the rainbow and what order they go in, which are the colours of the spectrum. And so it's just an easy way to direct people, because it's something everybody knows. When you look at art, you try to understand it, and so you try to make that journey, and hopefully this will make it easy for people to understand it.
If I'm not careful, I'll bounce off Point of Ayr into the Irish Sea. That would be a trip too far, because I've got to be in mid-Wales for my next journey.